Welcome to the Beyond the Call Sheet podcast series, where we interview creatives and hear their journey working in the creative arts.
I'm Ruby Hammer MBE, and I'm a freelance makeup artist and also a brand founder.
Could you tell me about your childhood and where you grew up?
I wasn't born in the UK. I was born in Nigeria in 1961, so that makes me 64 years old now. My mum was 7 months pregnant with me when they travelled out there. The British had just given them their independence, so they needed doctors, lawyers, teachers, engineers, all that. My father was a doctor. And I was born there, and he was only meant to stay for a year, but they fell in love with that country, and they ended up staying 12 years. So I went to school there, grew up there, my two brothers, younger than me, all there, until we happened to be on holiday in the UK, and suddenly the civil war broke out. So I say I'm from Bangladesh now, but it was East Pakistan at the time, and East Pakistan and West Pakistan were at war. So Dad couldn't take us back to a war zone, and he didn't have a job in Africa. So we ended up staying for months on end in like the Duke Hotel, Cumberland Hotel, all in central London. It was all lovely. Never had TV growing up, so I don't have that thing of, you know, people look at pop bands and they look at magazines and they have all kinds of info creatively, you know, for fashion shows or this or that. I didn't have any of that kind of stimulus. And we just gog-eyed watching telly all damn day long. And then he went downstairs one day, went into an auction and bought a house in Putney. Put us in school, got a job, and you know, we stayed here. Every year you'd have to go and get your paper stamped so that you got not citizenship but just residentship, allowed to stay, because we weren't we weren't a benefits cheat or anything. We weren't draining the economy, and that was it. And then in the end, that was 50 odd years ago. So I came when I was 52 years actually, and we fitted in. We were that, you know, we could speak English, and we assimilated. It was nice. But the main thing of that is people thinking, did you like makeup? Were you allowed to wear makeup? Were you like strict Asian parents? And they were strict and they were disciplined, but it wasn't about what time you went out or who your friends were, or eat this or don't, you know, it wasn't all like that. I was raised a Muslim, but I have a Guruji in India. My parents are very respectful of every faith and allowed me to be me. And the biggest inspiration for makeup for me, and it happens to be for quite a lot of female makeup artists, is it's their mum. And my mum was a young mum. She had me at 17. So that, I could see her. So even though she would be wearing a print, it would be a poochy chiffon sari with a go-go belt and the glasses and the wig stand and doing the eyeliner and putting eyelashes on, or cooking. She was a housewife, so she'd be cooking and sweating in front of this. You had like logs thrown into the fire, flames, and then a sweaty woman goes and showers, dons her makeup on, and she becomes, like, to me, a Bollywood star. So that's my inspiration. I've always seen it as, it's expressive. You know, 1 minute she's got a short wig on, next minute she's got ringlets on, and it was part and parcel of a woman's personality or nature, or how much you could transform yourself. So it wasn't looked at frivolous. But my mum was a young woman. If she didn't do that, then we're, you know. So I was just fascinated. And that love was there. But I wanted to be a doctor, like my dad. And when I started doing my O-levels at that time, I realised, the only science subject I liked was biology. Couldn't do chemistry, physics, forget it. So I changed to social sciences. And in that time, that love of makeup came out. So from the age of 16, 17 onwards, I had a Saturday job. And my first job, it was at, I think it was called Peter Robinson. So it's where the Topshop is, or used to be. And then I worked in Harrods. And again, it was for that love of makeup, looking at magazines, looking at fashion, for the discount. And Bieber was there, Miners was there, Stage Light, all these other, department store brands. So all my lunch hour or my 11s, coffee breaks, were going there, poodling around, always playing with makeup, looking at foreign magazines. And then I would just copy that on me. I had no inkling that there was such a thing as you could become a makeup artist or a hairdresser or anything like that. I just used to rip up those magazines, and my whole wall was not pop stars or not anybody like that. It was all these models, people like Iman, people like Janice Dickinson, Debbie Dickinson, all the American Vogue ones. And then I would look sometimes and see, oh, who's this guy, Way Brandy? Makeup artist, oh, you see the... And then you do it to British one and you'd see people like Barbara Daly or I don't know who the hairdressers were. But, you see those and, you kind of make a note, but that's it. All I did was just copy their look or try to make it work for me. And that was it. People would come to my house, my mum would feed them, I would do their makeup. I was useless at doing my hair, and somebody would have a go, and then off we'd go. And I wasn't a rock artist or punk rocker or any kind of those music. We were, Motown and soul heads, so we would dance for hours on end and didn't do drugs, didn't really drink. We had Coca-Cola, water, that was it. But you had energy, and we danced all night, sweated it all out. And that was the inspiration. So I played with makeup to the point where, because I lived in Putney and you'd come into town, you'd be on the King's Road and you could see those punk rockers and, oh my God, I love their makeup, would copy that. And then this lot would go, what are you doing that for? Are you a punk rocker? And I said, no, I just love how they look. So you would copy anything I saw, I'd try and put it on my face. And because I did my friends, I got a little bit of experience. And then when I finished university, I'm an economics graduate. It shocked some people, but you know what? It's there. Then I, by absolute chance, ended up assisting somebody. And that's when I came into formally, fashion or beauty or whatever that industry is, which was completely alien and new to me. So that's my start.
Could you tell me about your early years of assisting and what that led to?
My mum was a housewife all her life. And then one day she comes home and she says, I've got a job in a restaurant. And it's like a really trendy Indian restaurant in Soho, in Dean Street. And we're all laughing, going, what are you going to do, Mum? Are you a tea lady? You're not a waitress. You don't know. And she said, look, hospitality, you cannot teach anybody. It's either in your heart or not. She said, food, she goes, I've eaten things of those people who've never had... She came from a wealthy family. My father's not so. They were more educated. And she said, the things they haven't eaten, I know what it is. And hospitality and being friendly comes from you. That's it. I don't have to serve a plate or that, but I know what to do and I know how to make people feel welcome. And I didn't know, do I go and do a master's? Do I take a year out? Do I write my CV? What do I do? And she said, look, September to December is really busy time for us. Why don't you come and get some spare money and you can get on. So as it is, from the first time in my life, I wore a sari and I was a hostess. I would take their coats because it was in the winter. I would take them to their table. I didn't clear any plates or that. I wasn't trained. But in the afternoons, I'd do all the bookings. I'd do all the things. I could see the table plan. They've explained all that. So I did all of that. Lo and behold, first day at work is where I met my future husband. And he happened to be in the rag trade, as they call it, the fashion business. So big labels at that time with all the designers of that era. So people like Wendy Dagworthy and Betty Jackson, Bruce Oldfield, and then he was in the rag trade, so he made for Joseph, and there would be in Barney's and America and here, there and everywhere like that. So he became my boyfriend, and from becoming my boyfriend, I got married quite early, so I was like 23, I met him 24, I was married 25, I had my little girl. But one of those early chance events was a makeup artist that was a really good friend of his. So she came to dinner, and it was London Fashion Week. And all those shows used to be at the Chelsea Barracks. so Duke of York's behind the King's Road on there. And she had some assistants, but one had broken a finger and one was not very reliable. And there was another lady called Fiona Golfer who ended up working with Vogue, features, all kinds of things, lovely people. And he said, "You love makeup, don't you?" and all that. And she said, "I'm desperate." And she just kind of threw this Access All area pass at me. And she said, "All right, Ruby, I'll see you tomorrow at 4 a.m. And my face must have just drained because I thought, 4 a.m. And she said, "Well, the show is at 9:35. So when do you think you want to rock up?" And I was like, and my mum was passing by and she said, "Don't worry, I'll get you there." So she took me with my pass, off I go. I don't really know what you do, but I knew that she's a busy lady. She's got all these models. I've just got to make her life easy. Otherwise, what am I doing there? And she was very particular in that, do not interrupt her while she's doing it, just observe, watch. I learned lots of things like that from when I had assistants later on in the years that came by. No disrespect to her, because I learned a lot from her, but there were some things where I was like, I would explain what I was doing. I'd make sure they were fed and watered. I made sure they were paid, even if I wasn't, all that kind of thing. But I learned everything from Francine Schiffer because she did shows, she did editorial, she did advertising, inside, location, with the big photographers of that time, your David Baileys and Clive Arrowsmiths and those kind of, all those big names of the 80s. And I would just go there and assist. And she liked me because I was organised and I helped her out. So I would do columns to put like girls' names, and then I'd think, have they had base? Have they had their nails done? Have they done a full face? And then I did an extra column. She goes, "What's that for?" And I said, last minute checks, so that if everything was ticked, then we could go and stand behind when the girls would be being fed out. And she said, oh, okay, that's really good. So in that way, I organised her, and I knew that you had to be organised. Clean her brushes, do her kit, do all of that. Make sure she's fed, make sure her parking meter had been done, change. You needed coins and all of that at that time for your phone box, for your car. Everything I did, but I would learn. And then as she got friendly with me, I could ask questions, not immediately on the job, but she showed me, she learned, and we got on. And then suddenly we were doing a big commercial and she got double booked. So it was a very well-paid job in Germany. And then there was this part of a 3-day job going on. And I think one of the extras in that was Sadie Frost all those years ago, like an ice cream lady in a black and white uniform. And she said, "Ruby, I'm going to go to this job." And I said, "Yeah." And I'm she calls the producer, and I'm sort of standing there really quiet. And she said, "Look, I won't be here tomorrow. I've got a personal thing." And I'm like, trying to keep a straight face. And she said, "But Ruby can do that." And he's going, "Oh, yeah, we love Ruby. Yeah, and inside, I'm sweating and my heart is beating. I'm going, "Oh, yes, I've got the job." And it was the most I'd ever been paid. I did it because she'd already created a look. I was just maintaining it, but starting from scratch. They knew me because I prepped them beforehand. And that was a start where gradually there were more and more of these kind of jobs where she could think, I'm not letting you go. I'm going to do the jobs that I can have, but if there's a better paid job, you're just going to finish it off for me. And I was like, okay. And then it got to a point where I tested a lot in all of that time because I had no experience. I didn't go to art college. I didn't go to a beauty school. I'm not formally trained. Even today, it's just what I've picked up, and I've got an eye, I guess. Thank you. But sometimes you feel like an imposter, when you think of like someone like Pat McGrath or all these artistic, they know all the different eras of painters, or, like Lisa Rodriguez, there's a history of all of this, and I'm like, oh God, I didn't know any of that. I know Bollywood, a bit of eyeliner and all, but that's not my style, but I was just open. So I don't know if that's a really good thing to be, not to have any preconceived notions. But also, I just knew I wouldn't pretend to be something I was not. You learn, and we don't have in those days Google or checking internet to find out what that could be or not. But if it was a film, okay, I'll try and find it in VHS or whatever. Look, you do your research. So whatever that is, and you are very lucky, young people now, you can do your research like that. We didn't have that luxury, but you still do your research as much as you can before the job. Otherwise, you will be redundant. You can't come into it completely cold. You can't pretend you're a know-it-all, but you have to make some effort. And I made that effort as much as I could because I felt I was already, I had a handicap of kind of, but I didn't let it affect my confidence either. I was just very open, I'm willing to learn, I've done this bit of research, and then I'll see what the brief is, and then my job is to deliver that brief. And the job is different. So when it's editorial, it's different. When it's an advertising campaign, it's different. When you're doing a fashion show, it's different. And that was all there was. There's no social media. There's no this kind of that kind. It was either you're in a studio or you're outside. You're in a location or you're in a set. It's moving camera or stills or a show. That's it. It was easier, but it was still different. It's black and white film, coloured film. There was only Polaroids to be able to show you what you think your makeup looked like. You had no idea. The film went off to the lab, and good luck to you. It's not like digital now where I can see it. So when people now are lazy and don't watch a frame before they start filming, I'm like, can't do that. Go and have a look at the frame to see if there's anything you can fix. Okay? But in that point, because it's very important, you can't afterwards go, I didn't know, sorry, I was having a cup of tea. No. Go there, check it. Don't have all the things that we take for granted now. Even something like, I don't need to, that, they'll just Photoshop that. There's no Photoshopping. Somebody had a tattoo, somebody had a mark. You did the best you could to cover that because it was very expensive to do. You know, taking the mark out here and the leg on here and there, whatever. You did the best you can. And that means with all skin types, all ages, male, female, you just learnt your craft. And I learnt every day on the job. And when I got a chance to test, I tested with other assistants, you know, hairdressers' assistants or photographers' assistants, or even to photography. That if I got on with them, I'd say, look, if you're doing any tests, may I come and do that? And then sometimes I'd say, can I just have that makeup in one shot of black and white, or one with colour, or one with a bit of this, bit of that? And I'd ask them, just so that I didn't know everything. I still don't, but just to see, oh God, that, how does it read in this light, or in colour light, or outside, or this or that? And you learn and you glean a lot. And so it's all in there and comes out when it's necessary.
Could you tell me about your editorial years and what you learnt?
Once I was doing all these jobs now by myself, I realised I have to find an agent because you can't keep, track of everything. So I found myself an agent. And then you build your portfolio, and I guess you do the rounds, you do go-sees the way models had to go in those days. And my name was very, Ruby Hammer. It was my married name. So my maiden name was Ruby Ahmed. So it was always Ruby Hammer was my married name. And now I'm remarried. I've got divorced, I've remarried, and my poor present husband keeps saying, when are you going to use the name Ruby Kuchmarsky? And I've got to say no. It will go on my gravestone when I'm down, if I'm still with him, God rest. It will say it then. But my working name is that Ruby Hammer. It's like a doo-wop name. It's a really good name. It's not a made-up name. And sometimes you would turn up to jobs and they'd be like, oh, she's a woman. Oh, okay. That was it. But you did see a jolt because there weren't many people of colour or women of colour or artists of that in the UK anyway at that time. But this I call my editorial journey. So you go and see people, you have to see art directors and magazine directors and fashion, beauty, all of that. But the first big break I got was from British Elle magazine, and I will be eternally grateful to her. So the beauty director was a lady called Conran. And I did events with her. So there were brands called like Prescriptives that don't exist anymore, but it became a Lauder brand later. But so it was a thing to do with to readers. So I started off with those, but it was like a masterclass in those days. So the thing about me and her and all the other editors I worked with, I never gatekeep. I always shared techniques and tips and wanted the reader to be able to find a quick way of replicating that look that was on the catwalk with the products that were then available. And bear in mind, at those times, it was literally spring, summer, autumn, winter. You did not get the things now that we have accessibility to everything, whether it's abroad or not. You know, there are certain brands that you could only get in specialised stores like a Space NK or some department store. You'd have to go to America to get some of these things, you know, or wherever they were from. France, you know, like that was a thing. All of us, if you wanted something from Shurmura, beg, borrow, or steal, you'd ask somebody, please, if you're going to Paris, would you get me that? I'd get stuff for hairdressers, they'd get me something. That's how we networked, and we'd help each other out. But she gave me my first big break. And then one day at the end of this kind of event, she said, I don't suppose you don't do trips, do you? Because you've got your little girl. And I was like, she said, I've got a huge beauty issue and it's to St. Lucia, but I don't think you go. And I was like, what? Have you not considered me? And I said, no, I would go. My daughter's 5 now. She goes to big school. I can travel. And that was how it started. That I would then do this beauty issue with some fantastic models of that time. All over the place we went, to Thailand, Kenya, St. Lucia, like I said, many, many places with big, big supermodels of that era. And it was amazing, because if she hadn't said that, God knows I'd have been another slot somewhere, not. But then also something else happened when I realised, oh my God, I'm going to need a foreign agent, because then things come along where the centres, the hubs were London, obviously, because of fashion. But then a lot of our talent would go abroad. They'd go to New York or Paris. So whether they were the artists or the fashion designers would end up, you know, in those. So then I knew with my young family, and by that time my dad had Parkinson's, that my family was very, very important to me. So my career, I shot everywhere in the world, and I would do the best I could creatively do. But London was my base. I wasn't going to leave my family for anybody like that. And if I had gone somewhere like Paris or New York at the time, where like Di Kendall was there, or say Pat and Eugene and all these teams going over, you would have had a different career path. But I don't ever lament that. It's just the way it is. And you've got to realise that opportunities come your way and you grab them, and then they take you off to a tangent. So it's not a laminate, you know, oh, I've ticked that box, It doesn't happen like that. Be open to things in life that can come to your way. Try them. It works out. It doesn't, but it takes you a different way. It's very, very important to realise, have I got a foreign agent? Do I need that? Do I not? Just ask yourself those questions. And I did ask them. And for me, yes, I had a French agent, and that was when I got my first British Vogue job. But for my French agent, I've been here for years and nobody gave me a job that way. And you went to America a lot for all sorts of catalogue jobs, advertising jobs, things like that. And the way to tie this in is that Editorial in that time gave you not much money, but you worked with a calibre of hairdressers, stylists, art director, photographers. Then you got imprint. They were your tear sheets. They were your passport to better jobs and showed your creativity. And I was able to do that with colour, with skin, and I really showed skin. If anyone asked me now or then, I would not have known what is my unique thing. But now I realise, oh my God, I treated skin a certain way. So you do all the other stuff and other people were very creative doing all that, but I treated skin a certain way, and that was replicated. And on those pages of Elle or Marie Claire or whatever editions I was working on, and from one of my Elle beauty jobs, I got one of my highest paid jobs in advertising, and it was like a week, and it was like Carita, French, big name of skincare, because they saw the editorial, they wanted that photographer, they wanted that team. So we did it, went to Paris, and we got a mini fortune. And that was why we made the money, because you didn't make it on editorial, but it's fine. Now everyone asks for the first rate, or can I go home now? Is it overtime? Is it this? Is it not? We were prepared to do anything to just work with that calibre of person. I mean, not if someone was personally rude to you and horrible to you, and there were a lot of those, but you kind of swallowed. But the chance to further your craft, to work with somebody who had a different style, so not the same kind of pictures all the time. Somebody who does location is completely different to in a studio. Somebody who does portraits is different to moving fashion or act. I wanted that, and I liked doing different things with different people and gelling with different people. And you really build, and over the years I've kept, and I know some of them, and sadly at the age I am now, lots of people have passed away. All the people I worked with in the 90s and things like people like Steve Hyatt, Patrick Demarchelier, people that I hadn't worked with like Peter Limber, but their work that you admired. Many, many, many people in that build, and you're only as good as that last bit of work. You support them, and they have supported me.
When did you start to feel fully established?
Well, I never ever felt established, but when you look back, you think, oh yeah, I was established, I was working, I had all these bookings. And then came another new thing into my life, because my husband was in fashion, and suddenly, because of Naomi, and they owned something called The Sanctuary, which was a ladies only club in Floral Street in Covent Garden, and the fitness centre. So it went on into sort of beauty and lifestyle and well-being. And from that, he was an entrepreneur, and we would have all these chats, and he could see wherever I went on all my assignments, and I wasn't based in those countries, but I went on assignment all over the globe. I'd come back with all these things, unusual things and whatever. And then he said, we need to launch some products here. Who should we have? And I said, look, it's not about the normal things. We need to do things that are a bit more natural, and, like whether they're the Ayurvedic things or whether they're, like Kiehl's, and they didn't give us a look and didn't even bother answering the calls. But somehow we managed to connect with the people at Aveda in America, because before I was married, my boyfriend was from Minneapolis, St. Paul, which is the land of Aveda. And we made that connection. So we launched that in this country in a department store, Harvey Nichols. And they had never even done that. They were freaking out. But the owner, Hall, said, no, Ruby and George and Millie was our PR at that time. So that's how I know her. There's always connections. And you've really got to realise when you're in this industry, however technical or whatever skills are out there, still human bonds and skills that you build that gives you stepping stones. So you will help people, and you should help people, because you never know when they come and help you. And it was from that little era that we launched Aveda in this country. Tweezer Man, L'Occitane, Mr. Mascara. There were like other things that we would have just, Orbe, hairdresser, has passed away now. But before it became the luxury brand it was now, I met Orbe in New York, and he had these pots, they were tin pots that had like, not gel, but like cream that were like neon pink and blue and gold and God knows what. And we sold them on QVC, and we put Aveda on QVC, and people were freaking out like, what the hell is this? Oh my God. Now everyone, whether it's a luxury La Mer or whatever, wants to be on QVC, because that's where you sell, that's about awareness, and social media comes and it becomes another way of selling and reaching your customer. But in those days we were breaking the frontier. Sometimes now when I go to events and there are all these young influencers and then they go, oh, that's the OG, that's the OG. And I guess I am. So it's not just as a makeup artist, but there are these things behind the scenes in our industry that we were making happen and connecting. And I met Millie Kendall, who then became my business partner, my co-founder in Ruby and Millie, which is probably, some people only think you've done that, but then they don't realise there's all these other things we'd launched, and, they're linked. They're all little links. And there's no game plan. You take the opportunity, you run with it, but then these are stepping stones. And by the time it came to Ruby and Millie, can you imagine it? Our partners were Boots the Chemist. And people now think, oh, did you sell it to Boots or did you own it? But we didn't own not one. It was a deal done by my ex-husband. He had become that by that time. And unfortunately, we had no stake in it, but we did the work. We had two contracts running. One was the consultancy for doing the work. So we did formulation, which I was in charge of, packaging, Millie was in charge of, merchandising, training, PR, everything. I mean, we put these titles, we did it all together. It took 2 years to create, from 1996 to 1998, when it finally launched September in Harvey Nichols again. But our job was to do everything, and our retailer was Boots. And in those days, they gave us £7 million, which is a lot of money. We didn't have that sort of money, and they took a chance, and it was a unique collaboration and joint venture that I don't think they've done something like that before, and we didn't know. We were naive in lots of ways, but it put that brand on the map. Unfortunately, and I can say that, I'm very grateful to them because they put us on the map, and we were in Japan, we were in Thailand, we were in Taiwan, we were in Holland. We were going to go to America, but they had some issues, I don't know. In the end, all of that was a resounding success because something that was owned by Boots, and eventually, after the exclusive period in Harvey Nichols and Selfridges and all of that, it was in some of the bigger Boots stores, and people know me from that. But the other part of that is, again, you see that my ear was alert, my eyes, ears were alert. Before we did Ruby and Millie, I got, I don't know, by fluke again a little while back, to appear on TV. Now, again, you either were TV makeup artist, or you were editorial makeup artist, or you were a commercial makeup artist. Somewhere I've worn all those hats. And this one was by fluke. I had to do some live things for, what was it? It was Jeff Banks and, oh my God, I'm having a blank here. Close Show. So it was the Close Show, and it was live, and it was in some shopping mall in, I don't know if it was Manchester or Birmingham or somewhere, and then they were sort of asking, and they'd go, could you put, like, it was that time of very matte face, eyeliner, lashes, and a very matte sort of nudie lip or a dark matte lip. And the way they kept asking, I was looking at the book and they kept flicking and asking something, and I thought, God, they don't like my work. They're just trying to be nice to me and asking blah, blah, blah. And then they said, no, we love you, but what we need is you're going to have to be filmed doing that live. Do you think you could do that? And I was like, well, I'll have a go. I'll give it a go. And that was it, in a mall somewhere, standing there with a model trying to fix her lashes while you're sweating at the back and not pissing off the cameraman there, thinking it's just the back of your head coming in. I don't want to see the back of your head. But I'm also thinking, when she puts back and looks at it, did I put it on the right way, not gaps in there and all that? But slowly you learn all of that. And I learned that when I had my stuff in my hand, I could deliver to the camera very naturally and talk and explain it like I could do a quote for the editorial editors. And that then took off to like Star Challenge, to 10 years younger. It wasn't something, again, that you had in mind. But when I was thinking of doing Ruby and Millie, I was thinking, God, if I do 10 years younger, that would be really good for the brand, because it was at 8 o'clock, prime time on Channel 4. There's no way on hell's earth we could have bought that kind of advertising, but it put us on the map again. So I always said to them at 10 years younger, I'm not just going to talk about my brand, because you're not allowed to, not one thing, but I'm not going to not feature it. If they're talking about lip gloss and I've got the best one, just bears my name, I'm going to use it. Sorry, I am. And some others from other people, because that's the kind of artist I am. In my kit is everything, from a tub of Vaseline to something so expensive you can only get in America or not, or whatever. And that was also underlying brewing that worked for the success of Ruby and Millie, editorially, having blonde Millie, dark Ruby. I'm older, she's a bit younger. She's from marketing and PR, and I'm the consumer. You know, like, she ran shops, the Shulmora Boutique in Harvey Nichols, which is how I met her, by fluke. And she would tell me, Pat McGrath is using this green eyeshadow, you know, for the thing. Doesn't sell here. And I'd think, okay, I'll find a way to make it sell. So Pat would do it in the show, and I'd find a way to do it so that it would connect with the reader that's looking at it. And she's not a supermodel, and it's not in some remote exotic thing, but you make that work. And I guess I've done that. My whole working life, I've done that.
Could you tell me more about your collaborations and how you evolved?
My collaboration with the TV shows continued, because, you know, then you shot for other things like This Morning or Richard and Judy. So they carried on. And then you are still a jobbing artist, which is what I am. You're very experienced. You are, you get those jobs here, there and everywhere. So you're making a living. And I have to say, every day I'm grateful that I made a living from something that is in my DNA, is in my blood. I feel passion for it. I don't get up and go, oh God, I'm just doing it for the money. It's never been like that. And when you have that, it's a real blessing. The other thing we should all be paying attention to is your health. And when you are a freelance person, if you don't take care of, there's a lot of pressure. You're traveling, your immune system, you're this, you're that, you come across loads of people, and COVID probably showed us that. You have to bolster and strengthen your own health, because when you don't work or can't get to work, you're not making any money. So, you know, it's not like I've got a job, it pays, doesn't. In all of this, so I'm working away, doing the thing, and the health came, not with my health, but my mother's health. So she was diagnosed with cancer, and it was literally like you're running on a treadmill, and you know when they press that red button, boof, and you literally jump out and you stop, boof. So it was an involuntary, like, no work, because I nursed my mum with my brothers, my family, and it was really hard. It was really hard, because for the first time, I'm not working. I'm looking after somebody. I'm not taking, and people were very kind to me at that time. They were really kind. So this is where you realise all the years, you know, by that time, I've been in the industry over 25 years. So people do help you and offer you words, whatever that was. It was really, really wonderful. But what it also tied in is with that period of Ruby and Millie came to an end, because it wasn't a commercial failure, but it was like a marriage. You can't have two parties that it doesn't satisfy the needs of both. So from our side, our partner Boots didn't satisfy us for whether we were getting all the money or our minimum requirements or the creativity to go out there. I'll give you an example where if we had a big meeting and we wanted to do this kind of eye waterproof proofer, so we came out with this idea to think, why don't we do this thing that you could put on your lashes and it makes it waterproof? Oh my God, no, sorry, no, it's very... And yet 18 months later, I think Estee Lauder had that. They brought something out, or maybe it was Clarin. Somebody like that brought it out. And then the same team would come back and say, could we do that now? And Ruby and Millie, and me and Millie were like, no, we're not Me Too brands. We're not going to do that. We gave you that. We would have been ahead of the game, and now we're just going to look like we copied somebody. And we had that bit of integrity. But it's an ongoing relationship, and the personal relationships broke down. You know, Millie was there day to day. I was a creative director, so I wasn't dealing with them day to day. But you had to manage the trade-off. And in the end, we gave them notice to say, no, this is not satisfactory for us anymore. And sadly, for them and for us in the future, because if they had that vision and maybe were able to make compromises, that brand would exist now, and there's nothing like that. And lots of people have copied that concept. But it came at that time where, so it gave me a way to step back, nurture Mum. But it meant that I was 50 when she passed away, and you were like orphan nanny. By then, my father had passed away several years earlier. And it's a quiet period, and you didn't mean you stopped, but then we're in this era now of social media, and by that time you give your messaging, and you do things on Instagram, or I don't know if TikTok was there, but all of these kind of things, the digital era has come. And I was a bit like Rip Van Winkle, you're underneath, and then suddenly you reared your head and you're like, what is this? And I'm not the most technical person, like I remember them having to fax me my details for the next day, or you stand in the studio and you get your details for the next day's job. And suddenly you're on email and you're this and you're that. And I wasn't the most savvy, but I knew you had to make yourself relevant. Otherwise, you will get trodden by. But I'm also not one of those people that slag off all the young, oh God, in our era we did it this way and we did it that way and it was like this and that. You must bring yourself, without losing who you are, up to speed in the best way you can. Like now on my Instagram and all that, I never hidden my age. I don't filter. I don't Photoshop lots of things like that. So it's very authentic and real. And this era was finding your feet back again, and in the middle of it, you start, I've got to have a website then, I've got to have an Instagram account then, I've got to post some things, what are relevant, what are not, trudging along. And then one day, and people are always asking you, because they've seen you always doing something. Are you going to do another brand then? What are you doing? What are you doing? I've said, what you realise when you're a brand founder is you put so much effort and energy, and it's a relentless amount of things you need to keep in your head, not just exercising your craft, that I wasn't confident. I'd lost my mum. And then that threw me into physically. I was 50 years old, so as a woman, I was in the menopause. I didn't know I had that. So you've got anxiety for the first time. You're getting night sweats. You're getting hot flushes, shorter fuse. So sometimes you're on a job where before I could swallow everything. I'm thinking, what is that person doing? But you keep it because you have to have an element of being diplomatic and not just, knee-jerk reactions and throw everybody under the bus. As a freelancer, you've always got to keep that where you're not the person that throws everybody else under the bus. But it was on the tip of my tongue where thinking I've got no tolerance or patience for this anymore. And I thought, okay, step back a little bit. Things came back normal. You know how to manage the menopause effects. I'm not just going to retire now. And this seed was like on itch, I call it. I was lying on a beach. I don't know if it was the Maldives or Turks and Caicos or something like that. And I thought, there's so much noise out there. All these brands are now available globally. So if they weren't in your Space NK or in your department store, you could get them. They get delivered. Yes, you pay a little bit more or whatever it was. Suddenly, there's a lot of noise. Wonderful brands out there. Charlotte Tilbury taking off this one. And then I thought, do I want to do that again? You know, the Ruby and Millie had over 360 plus SKUs. And I thought, no, I can't be doing that. And also then you've got to go and get money and funding in that way, where I'm now in my midlife. Do I want to be homeless because I can't pay back some venture capitalist or people who've invested in you? And you've seen it by now. You've seen the great success. And yes, it's worth this many hundreds of millions, but this is what you've got to do. And I'm like, no. So there's a realistic evaluation of who I am, what I want in life anymore. And I thought, no, I've still got something. I've still got a message I can give to people. And I created the brand that bears my name, and it's Ruby Hammer Beauty. So it was a very edited, small range, considered range, because I wanted it to be as well as, not instead of. In my kit, still everything from all these brands. And I'm very supportive like that. I don't think I've got the best thing there. And I thought, God, if I want to do this, that's going to have concealers and foundations like Fenty. The benchmark was 50 shades. How are you going to get the money to do 50 shades, to do this, to do that? And it was like, oh my God, no. And I've done that. So I'm not doing it all like I'm showing off, but I genuinely have done that. I don't need to do that again. And this means their vegan range, it's really, really good packaging, I feel. Formulas are outstanding. My jobbing artists out there, whether it's a Wendy Rowe or Kay Montana, whoever's out there, Pat McGrath, they use it, they like it. And that gives me a lot of satisfaction that my peers and the artists that are younger, they use it. They don't. Some of them have heard of Ruby Millie, some have never heard of us. But it's like that. It's small and effective. And I can control it. And God forbid, if tomorrow I shut the doors, I'm going to make sure all my suppliers are paid, staff are paid. Thank you very much. I call it a day. But it's ticking along nicely, slowly. But I don't feel that I have to put everything on the, like I have to borrow. I can. In the beginning, when I started, there were people saying, surely you could you not just expand and make this a bit bigger and then we could take it on? The retailers are the same. But I thought, I can, but what if I can't fulfill it? The name will go and I won't be able to sustain that. The work, you have to be honest about how much you're prepared to do. And I'm not lazy, and I've never been one that, let's just take other people's money and do that. I've always known you've got to pay back somebody's investment. And this way, it's my investment to my angels and my relationship with them, and that's it. And as we grow slowly, I'll put in investment in that. And I've got little stages from when I first started. But then COVID came and gave us a really good kicking, and it changed the nature of that industry again. So we all have to find our feet there. We, as the UK, we're out of the European Union. That affects compliance, how you ship things, don't ship things. So there are things in the background. So if you just think, I love the sound of my name, be careful in the future, because you've got to be aware, is that the cleverest thing to do if you want to sell it on or you get into some dispute with somebody? So think all these things through. And it's fantastic to get investment, but it's not your money to do with what you want. Bear that in mind. You're going to have to pay them back, or they will want their money back, and it can have negative repercussions, but don't be scared by it. If you've got something unique and it's relevant to you, pertinent to you in the marketplace now, there's always restaurants opening because people need to eat. There's always bits we put. Same with our beauty and our well-being and our care. If you've got something decent, unique, and you really believe in it, you'll find a place for it. So don't hear the negative noise, but be prepared to know It's relentless. It's hard work. It takes discipline. It takes humour. It takes building bridges with people and taking care of yourself. Because if you're not well, you're substandard, you can't deliver any of this. You can't be any good to anybody in your private life and in your working life. So I always say nurture that in yourself. So exercise, eat well, meditate, take your supplements, build friends, relations, do what you like to do outside work that isn't just about networking just for the work.
Thanks for watching or listening to Beyond the Call Sheet. I hope you found it interesting, and if you'd like to be notified of the next episode, then don't forget to subscribe or like. Thank you.